Okay. So, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. A little bit tired because last night we
Yeah,
arrived back home at 4 a.m. or something, so
I took the flight.
a long flight.
How do you reflect on your race weekend?
A bit disappointing, a bit frustrating because the first two races were, well, the first race I didn't even finish, so that's never good. The race on Sunday was better. We went from 21st to P12 or P11, I think. So just outside the points, which is, close but no cigar. But it's always fun to drive in Baku. It's quite a unique circuit.
Yeah, I believe you. Yeah, it was a P11. I actually watched the race, but it's like, yeah, I'm really pleased to have you here. It's really an honor to be able to discuss with you. And
Thanks.
yeah,
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here.
coming back to your race weekend, we actually asked ourselves how it's like for you during a normal race weekend. Um, let's say a weekend where snow F2. What do you do? What contacts do you have with Williams, or are you present? Are you at the factory? Or yeah.
So there's two different situations that we usually have. The first is for the European races, where if there's a problem and I need to go to fill in for a driver or to do the race, it's quite easy for me to get on a flight or even to drive, and I can go out quite last minute. And in that case, I will stay at the factory and I'll be working in a simulator that we have, and we can correlate what's happening on the real track to what's happening in the simulator and use the simulator to collect data and to work on a few extra things for the setup. On a weekend where they're racing further away, for example, like this weekend in Baku or in America or Asia, then I would normally fly with the team and I would stay with them for the weekend. And I would attend all the briefings, the meetings, just stay up to date with the car and basically be on standby so that if there was an issue, I'm there, I can just jump in very quickly and it's no problem. But those weekends are usually a little bit more boring for me because there's less for me to do and it's more just watching. So I'll be in the garage during the sessions and speaking with the engineers and just trying to learn as much as possible, really.
As you already mentioned, the fact that you're in the garage with the team and the other drivers, how do you? Yeah, does it make a difference that the true Williams family isn't there anymore? That now it's the investment funds. So for you, does it make difference? Do you? Yeah, has your relationship changed?
Yeah, I suppose it's a little bit different in the sense that Williams was one of the only family-run teams for a very long time, and the last one for a long time as well. And there's quite a special connection when you have a family-run team. I think it made a really good atmosphere in the team, but at the same time, the new investors that have come to own the team, I think, have done a really good job in providing the resources that the team needs. So this year we've been able to be more competitive and to develop the car and just basically bring the team further forwards on the grid, which is always the aim at the end of the day. So it's sad to lose the history of the team, or lose that part of the history, but everybody there wants to win races and to be as competitive as possible. So in that sense, I think it's been quite a positive change and everyone is quite happy at the moment with that.
You said that it's like a little bit boring to be a third driver. Do you have any relation with the other third driver, like Stoffel van Dorn from Belgium, or other drivers? Do you talk about it or about this difficult job?
Sometimes, yeah. So I don't know Stoffel that well personally because he's a little bit. He was further ahead on the ladder than me and a bit older, but I was in the lift with him this weekend, and he's, filling that role, and for sure everybody finds it a bit boring. I speak a lot with the other British drivers that are also in that role. So Callum Ilott, for example, who's doing it with Alfa Romeo, and sometimes as well Alexander Albon for Red Bull. So for sure you get to see each other in the paddock, and you spend some time together, which is nice. But especially with COVID at the moment, every team is usually staying in their own bubble, and you're not really allowed to mix between the teams a lot to keep things as safe as possible. So it's reduced a little bit this year.
How does it come? Why are there so many young British drivers? I mean, it's you, it's Lando, it's George, it's Alex, it's Callum. You have also Dan Ticktum in also for Williams. How did it come so far? Why is there such a hype around motorsport or Formula 1 and Formula 2, especially in England?
I don't know. I think historically the UK has always been has always had quite a big involvement in motorsport. We have a long history of Formula 1 drivers, and growing up in the UK, the karting culture is very strong. So when you're a young kid, 7, 8 years old, up to 15 or 16, there's a very, very competitive scene for karting, and that always helps to develop drivers. Outside of that, I'm not really sure. I mean, obviously, a lot of the Formula 1 teams are also based in the UK. I think it's something like 8 or 9 teams are based in the UK, maybe a bit less, 8 teams. So there's always been a strong history. And for me as a kid, when I was growing up, I was always watching Formula 1, and I really like cars in general. So I took up karting, which was very easy to do. And because it was so competitive, I was just going into European competitions quite well trained, I would say. I think it's the same for a lot of British drivers.
And yeah, I guess you get along quite well altogether. Like, you're all around the same age.
Sometimes.
George, Alex, and so on. I mean,
yeah. No, I've known Alex, especially. I've known since 10 years old. Was when we started racing together. So, and George, I was racing against when I was 12 or 13. So, for sure, you'll see each other a lot as you're all progressing through the different categories of racing. I think you always have a bit of a bond and a respect for each other as well. Not always you're going to be friends, because at the end of the day, it's a sport and it's very competitive. But most of the guys, we all get on very well.
So, and how is your? Yeah, I don't know if you're a friend with Dan Ticktum, but how is your relationship? In the sense that you are both Williams young drivers, and yeah, I think Dan has quite a very a strong character. Let's say that's how it looks from the outside, at least. So yeah, how do you?
Yeah, I'm sure he would thank you for that comment a lot. Yeah, he's a good guy, Dan. I mean, I know I've known him since karting for quite a long time as well. I think he's a very good driver. We see each other around Williams occasionally. He's doing work in the simulator also, and obviously driving in Formula 2 again this year. Yeah, I think it's always good to maintain a level of respect, at least. We're not seeing each other away from the track and going to get a drink and have a dinner together or whatever, but I think we both have a good level of respect, and that's really the minimum that you need between the drivers. So with that, it's okay.
He looks quite honest, let's say, Dan, from the outside.
He just speaks his mind, and that's fine. So we all get a bit heated in the cockpit for sure, and when they're playing the radio messages on TV, it's difficult for everybody because for sure I've said some things that I wish I didn't on the radio. Yeah, it's very tricky to keep a cool head.
And who was your idol when you were a kid?
Probably the closest would be maybe a combination of Schumacher, because when I was growing up, I started karting in 2003. So it was just in the middle of the Schumacher domination in that era, which was really impressive to see. And then later, Hamilton, when he was just starting at McLaren, because it was really impressive to see a really young British guy coming to a team with a world champion, with Alonso, and he was beating him in the first year. So, you know, for kids like us, it was really impressive. And he's, even now, I think I'm still impressed all the time by his performance. So those two guys, I think, stand up the most.
Yeah, Hamilton could be like an inspiration for a young British driver, being a world champion as
sure.
Young.
And I think he's really one of the greatest that the sport has ever seen, if not the greatest. So we're quite lucky in a way to see it happening now. And for drivers like us who are coming up as rookies, trying to challenge someone like that, it's you learn a lot, and I think it's very special.
How was it then for you to race against Lewis last year?
Well, I didn't race against him much, so I think if I had the chance, then it will be really interesting for sure. But I mean, I already learned a lot when I was in the car in Bahrain. But yeah, I haven't had the chance to race him yet.
How were you notified? How did you get the message that you would replace George? Yeah, what do you remember from it, or what have you learned from it?
Well, so much. Yeah. Well, to start, the first that I saw any problem was when I woke up. I think it was Tuesday morning before that race weekend, and I saw in the news that Hamilton was testing positive for COVID. And to be honest, at the time, I didn't really think that that was very exciting, because I know that Mercedes also have reserve drivers, and normally I would expect them to take the reserve driver like Stoffel and to put him in the car. Then later in the day, I was getting some messages from the team and from George, explaining that the situation might be different, and that George maybe will go to Mercedes, and therefore I would go to Williams. So then I was making some calls and just trying to see what I could do. And the answer was not very much. I just had to wait. So I waited until Wednesday morning, and then it was confirmed finally from the team manager, team principal Simon Roberts. And he called me and said, it's done. So, you know, you should come to the track and we'll start to prepare. And then from that point, it was all quite flat out. You know, I didn't have a lot of time to sit and really think about what was happening. It was just flat out to learn all of the procedures, to get prepared for the weekend, to find the equipment that I needed, to check that I was comfortable in the car, and then, you know, starting practice and everything. So it went really, really quickly. But that was almost a good thing, because I didn't have a chance to be, you know, shocked, like surprised that I was in that situation. And the weekend itself was amazing. I learned a huge amount, mainly just because it was the first time that I had a chance to drive the car for a whole weekend, rather than just to go for one test session or for one day. I learned a lot as well about the race situation, which is quite different to testing, when you're really fighting other cars and trying to execute a strategy. So it was an incredible weekend. I mean, on the Monday afterwards, when I finally had a chance to rest and to really stop and think about it, it was just incredible. So I was really, really grateful, and it's for sure a memory that I will take, you know, for the rest of my life, and I can be really happy with that. And I was happy with my performance during the weekend as well. I think I did myself proud, even though I was making a small mistake in the race. But even with that, I was happy because I was able to push the car really hard and have good pace compared to my teammate, Latifi. And I was even fighting with Kimi on track, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, we actually talked about it just before the interview. And if I remember correctly, you caused a yellow flag, and that was the flag that that made George get into the box. No.
Yep.
But
these things happen. I mean, I didn't do it on purpose, you know.
I hope so.
I'm sorry for George, but that's you know, if I could choose, I would not crash as well.
It looks like it was yeah. You were quite lucky in the sense that you changed the race academy last year in 2020, you know, to Williams. Before that, you were a Renault academy driver, if I remember correctly. So yeah, how did that come about? That you, because yeah, normally you don't change the academies.
Yeah, it came about because I spent 4 years at Renault. When I joined them, I was quite young. I was even just finishing school. And I learned a huge amount from the academy there. They gave me the opportunities to test the Formula One car. And they also supported me in the junior categories, which is, for a driver, it's huge because it's a very expensive sport at the end of the day. But at the end of 4 years, I think we were reaching a sort of a natural end to the relationship. I had learned already a huge amount from the team and felt like there was more to be gained to go somewhere new and to meet new people, a new way of working, and to see if I could improve myself even more as a driver. And Williams were very keen to have me join their academy and to join as the reserve driver. They recognized that I had some experience already with testing Formula One cars. And as well, they're very, they want to have the best drivers possible. With George and Nicholas now, they have quite a strong lineup. And the ambition for me is always to try and replace one of those guys and to get a race seat. And they're supportive of that as well. So it was a little bit a case of just wanting to change something to get a bit of a different way of working. And I obviously got very lucky that I got to race the car as well. So, yeah.
You're still young, but do you think about the future? Because drivers or in other sports, the careers stops like really young. So do you want to stay in the world of driving, or will you study anything, or what is your plans for the future if you have it?
I mean, as a driver, I think in Formula One, your career, it can be quite short. I mean, there are not many guys going beyond the age of like 35 years old. For sure, there are other categories that you can race in, like GT cars. You can race for a bit longer. You know, there are guys racing until they're 40 or 50 years old and still being quite competitive. But it's another question if you really want to do that. I think a lot of guys, when they reach that age, I think they are happy with the career that they had and they want to find a new challenge. You know, it's the same in a lot of areas of life. I think if you're doing the same thing for 20 or 30 years, eventually you want to do something else. So I don't know, maybe that day will come for me, or maybe I'll be happy to drive until I'm 50, because it's possible. In terms of studying, I don't have any plans. I didn't go to university because I wanted to follow my career in racing. I thought about it a little bit, and something I was interested in was to do something in psychology, or to really look at the sports side of that. And it's performance at the end of the day, which I'm really interested in. So maybe there's something in sports science to look at afterwards. But I don't know. You'll have to ask me again in like 20 years.
Okay, we will schedule a meeting for today in 20 years then.
Yeah, okay.
Speaking of psychology, you told about it. Do you have like a personal coach for the mind, because it's so important in driving?
So I don't have a coach like day to day, for example, but I have somebody that I have seen in the past and who has helped me with specific problems, or maybe I ask for a bit of support during the race weekend, because like you say, for sure, it is a massively important aspect. And I think more and more people are becoming aware of this as well, that there are gains to make in mental performance. So I've done some work for sure on that. And I've been through some courses and done my own reading as well and things like that, because it's something that interests me. But it's a very difficult thing to achieve, to get really good mental performance every weekend, especially when you're traveling quite a lot. You're often going for weekends 2 or 3 weeks in a row to different countries. You're sleeping in different beds. You're often very stressed. The physical element of the car can make you quite drained. So to keep yourself in peak condition takes a lot of energy and focus, and it's something that I try to put a lot of time into.
Yeah, and I guess it's even more difficult in Formula One or Formula Two, because it's much more mediatized than some other categories. So yeah, everything you do might be published in any newspaper or on the internet or whatever. Yeah. So I guess it's very difficult, because you can't put it wrong in that sense.
Yeah, I think it's something that the further you come up the categories from karting to Formula 4, Formula 3, Formula 2, you feel the extra pressure and the extra scrutiny. You know, more people are watching you. For sure, if you're doing some mistakes and saying some bad things or whatever, you can get punished really, really badly for that. Not just by the authorities of the racing organizers, but also in public. You know, sponsorship is very difficult to find. And if I say or do something that's really stupid on the weekend, and I lose the sponsorship, it's a complete disaster for your career. So you have to be really, really careful and just really clever about that stuff at the end.
Actually, there are two questions which come to my mind. First thing is, because you already mentioned other categories a few minutes back, would you consider a career in any other category like DTM, like Alex does? And second question, because you mentioned sponsors, would you consider, since you are half English, half Korean, would you consider maybe moving to Korea or try your luck there? Or again, a bit like Alex does or did with Thailand a few years back.
So for the first question, my heart is really set on Formula One. So that is the goal for me. But I would also be stupid to not be thinking about setting up a career in other series. You know, there's a couple of us younger guys like Callum and Alex who are racing in DTM or GT, and they're very competitive series. It's not as famous as Formula One for sure, but the racing is just as hard. And I'm also doing a bit of racing in GT this year. It's teaching me some new things, and it's also opening the door to the world of endurance for me. So if Formula One is not achievable for whatever reason, then I can always choose to go down the route of GT and endurance and things like Le Mans, the Nordschleife 24 hours, some of the big races in America. These are all things that I would love to do. So yeah, for sure, you think a little bit about this kind of stuff. And then on the sponsorship side, I don't know. I mean, Alex is in a similar situation, being half Thai as well as half British. And I'm with my Korean heritage. We try to advertise as much as possible the benefits for Korean companies to work with me and to go to Formula One. I'll go to Korea again, not so much now during COVID, but in previous years, I was going to visit family, but also to meet with Korean companies to try to encourage them to invest in my career. I'm not sure if I would, I've lived in the UK pretty much my whole life. So to go and live in Korea would be quite an adjustment. I'm really interested to spend more time there. But in the end, I think you have to be balanced about these things. I'm still half British and have a lot of history there as well. So rather than commit 100% one way or the other, it's better to try to take the best of both and to market yourself as both. When I'm speaking to a Korean company, I'm talking about the benefits of having the first Korean Formula One driver on their as one of their partners. And when I'm speaking to a British company, I'm talking about the benefits of opening up to a Korean market, which has not really been, fully exploited yet in terms of motorsport. So you just have to see the benefits from both sides.
Yeah, since you already mentioned the more company side of things and business side of things, on a more funny note, how did you came about that you had the VTF1 sticker on your campus car back then? Or are you still active with them? Would you consider a career in media afterwards? Or
so I'm still active with them in some ways, but the sticker was always just it's for Tommy Bellingham, who is the guy who created WTF1. He was introduced to me by a friend when I was racing in Formula Renault, which was like 5 years ago now. And I didn't really have many sponsors then. So I said, oh, for sure, I can put a sticker on the car for nothing. It's okay. And I really like the website anyway. And we did some collaborations, some media work together as well. And it kind of just grew and grew. And now I know all of the guys and girls there, and they're really excellent. Tommy is still working there, of course. And no, we're just friends. I'm a friend of the company, I think. And whenever I have the chance to do something with them, I do it. Now it's more and more difficult because for sure I was a little bit busier, but they really got busier. The company is huge now. And I think they're doing really, really a good job. So they don't need to have someone like me putting the sticker on the car anymore.
Another big question we had was actually the whole lifestyle of a Formula driver, be it Formula One or Formula Two or Formula Renault, whatever. Like the fact that you are constantly traveling, you are not much home. We often hear how the older pilots talk about it, but what do you make of it as a younger pilot? Or what is your opinion of it, and what difficulties did you encounter and still encounter?
So the lifestyle is quite typical for an athlete, but very different to a normal job. Through the winter months, so from December until about February, you do nothing. you do nothing except train and wait for the new season to come and take a bit of a holiday, because by the end of the season in December, you really need a holiday, and not just to go for 1 week to the beach. It's to really take like 3 weeks with the family, some friends, and you don't think about racing too much. by the end of the 3 weeks, you are definitely starting to miss the racing and you want to go back, but you need to recharge that the battery a little bit. And then during the season, it's a lot of travel, a lot of flying, a lot of driving, not on the track, driving to places, and a lot of staying in hotels, not always the best ones, especially before you get to Formula One. Even in Formula 2, it can be quite a mix of quality, you know. So you have to get quite comfortable with traveling and with not being at home. I think one year I calculated, I did something like 60 flights, and I did at least half of my weekends were away from home. And that was quite a busy year, but half of your time in the year away is a lot. And it means that you don't get to see your friends who are living in your hometown, for example. You don't really get to see your family that much. If you're having a partner like a girlfriend or a boyfriend who is not in motorsport, you don't see them either. So it can be really difficult from the personal relationships side of that. And that's why I think in Formula One especially, you see that a lot of teams, they have a really close connection because you spend so much time with the mechanics, the engineers, other drivers, even, you know, down to the race organizers, the people who are making the stewards' decisions. You get to know them very well. Also, it was the birthday of the Formula 2 steward this weekend, for example. So it's almost like a second family that you have traveling away from home. So very different. It just takes some getting used to. But now, after I've been racing in cars for 6 years now, or 7 years, even longer probably, and you get used to it quite quickly. But it is important to be able to take a break every now and then, and to be able to step away from motorsport and to think about something else, because it can be very all-consuming at times.
From point of view of your mental approach, I mean, when you're in Formula 2 or Formula 1, like you said, you already have a certain experience. But when you begin, when you are 15 or 16, the first time you have to go abroad every week or every other week and leave everything behind. So how is that? Because that's something which is not often talked about, but I guess that's one of the biggest difficulties young pilots experience.
Yeah, I think it depends. I mean, for me, when I started in, I think the first European races I was doing in cars was 2013, and I found it really exciting because it's something new, and you know, to go to these European competitions is in a way is quite a well, yeah, it's exciting because you're meeting drivers from all over Europe. The standard is really high, and the teams are more professional. The circuits are better. Everything is more impressive. So at first, I think it's quite enjoyable. And also, usually at that age, you are not as busy. And also, if you're young, then you would need to have your one of your parents coming with you anyway. So it's a bit of a different experience. For me, the harder transition was actually when I started to become a bit older. So you're more independent anyway. And you're starting to go to the really big categories like Formula 3 or Formula 2, where you're expected to go to more races, more testing. You have to, before the races, usually you will go to the team. So if your team is French, for example, but you live in the UK, then you'll be expected to fly to France first. And then from France, maybe you will go to the race. So it's even more time away. And you have more sponsor commitments. There is more pressure. So everything is becoming more difficult at that time. And I think this is the harder thing than actually when you're first starting to travel, where it's quite relaxed, I would say. Yeah. And in terms of how you deal with that, I think it's just you focus on the important things, which is the process of your practice, making sure you're ready mentally and physically, doing all of your homework, so that when you arrive at the track, you are completely relaxed. You know that you're ready, and you're not making any problems for yourself. And after the weekend, whatever the result is, to be quite cold about it. So if you have a good result, you're not completely taking your foot off the gas and you're saying, okay, this is easy. I don't have to do any work now for the next few days. And equally, if you have a bad result, that you're not completely pressuring yourself and like really punishing yourself for that, because you can have a bad result even if you're really well prepared and if you're doing all the right things, but you were just unlucky, or there are things that are outside of your control. So yeah, for me, that was the important things anyway.
Do you have like a relationship with other Belgian drivers, or you had a relationship with Belgian drivers? There are not a lot, but if you have.
I'm trying to think now. I don't think so, actually, so much. I mean, we already mentioned Stoffel, but I didn't really speak to him so much. He was racing in the categories above me usually, so I was watching him a lot and thinking it was quite impressive what he did. But I never spoke to him that much, to be honest. For sure, I was racing some Belgian guys in Formula Renault while I was there, but they were not progressing really to Formula 3 or Formula 2. So there's not so many people now, yeah. Unfortunately.
Maybe in the future.
Maybe, yeah. Belgium has quite a strong history with drivers also, but I mean, later this month, I'm going to go to Spa to do some testing. It's always been one of my favorite places in the world of motorsport. So there's a strong connection there. And even when I was in karting, I was going a lot to, I don't know if you know the circuit in Genk, but it's at the time when I was driving and karting, was one of the top circuits in Europe, and I think it still is. So as a country, there's a really strong history there for sure.
Yeah, there's also Zolder.
And of course, Zolder,
yeah. Famous for
yeah.
And you will be in Spa this year, in August?
Just for some testing. For F1, not. I don't think, because it's a European race. So probably I'm just going to be in the simulator in the UK. Maybe I can race in the GT race there, the 24-hour race. But it still needs to be all confirmed. So yeah, I'm not sure yet.
And you don't know if you will get the first free practice session to drive around, or generally.
I will get.
Go on.
I will get one. I'm just not sure at which race yet. So sometime later this year, it will happen for sure.
Okay, so that was actually my other question. Like Roy also got some test sessions, and you don't know, how long prior to the actual session do you know that you will drive?
It depends. I mean, for someone like Roy, who there was clearly a plan this year to do some driving in FP1. Probably they decided for quite a long time before which ones he will do, so that he has enough time to prepare and all of that stuff. For me, the schedule is changing a little bit depending on a few things. So normally I would hope that I get maybe 1 or 2 months notice. But it could be less. It could be less than 1 month, and you just have to be ready.
Actually, since you already mentioned the schedule, you came in for Nannini this year in Formula 2. You just had a contract for Monaco and Baku, if I'm right.
Yeah, that was the plan. I don't think that we do any more races, because the team was just asking me to come because they didn't find a driver who can bring the necessary budget in such a short notice. and they wanted me to help to develop the car as well, because I have experience in Formula 2. And they are having some problems at the moment, let's say. So these two races, the main focus for me was to help them as much as possible and to give them feedback on the car and also the way that they are working. And hopefully now they will be able to find a driver to complete the rest of the season.
Yeah, how was your relationship with the ladder? Because yeah, you came in for the second round, and you will leave after the third round. So I guess it's not that easy to build up any kind of relationship with your yeah, it's not really your teammates in Formula 2.
Yeah, no, I've always found it not so difficult to have a good relationship with other drivers, especially if they're your teammate. So with Alessio, I didn't have any problems, and he's a nice enough guy. Obviously, he's learning a lot at the moment. He's really just trying to survive the races and to pick up as much knowledge as he can, which is he's in a difficult situation because he doesn't have, I think, really enough experience before. But he's a nice guy, and I had a good relationship with him there.
And generally speaking, because in Formula 2, I mean, contrary to Formula 1, it's not like a teammate where you have team orders and so on. It's more individual as a sport. So yeah, how do you reflect on that? Is there really a rivalry, or are pilots going on quite well, or are there conflicts, or yeah?
It depends on the team and the drivers. In a situation where one driver is consistently ahead of the other driver, then there's usually not really any problems, because there is not you're not close to each other on track, and there are not problems in the team with who is really leading the team. The problems can come if there are two drivers who are quite equal and really fighting near the top together. And if the team is not managing that situation very well, in terms of the personal relationships, but also how they are distributing the resources of the team, then you can have problems for sure. Because at the end of the day, in Formula 2, in Formula 1, the drivers are being paid. They are employees of the team. But in Formula 2, it's not the case. The drivers are bringing the sponsorship and money to the teams. So it's a slightly different dynamic. Team orders are not common at all. I would say that it's very rare. Normally, the drivers are just fighting on track as they would almost any other driver. So yeah.
You experienced 3 or 4 different teams by now. You had Campus, HWA, ART, and yeah, I don't know if there's another one. Yeah, it's a spec series, so the cars are basically the same. But what really makes the difference between a good team and a medium team and a worse team? Is it really the money the drivers bring?
There is a little bit of a difference with the money. For sure, a top team will be asking more money from the drivers than a team at the bottom. And they will use that extra money to have extra resources, to have better simulations, to have better people. Because the mechanics, the engineers, the management of the team are all very important, obviously. And there is a competitive market for the best people in these teams as well. Even though the cars are all the same, there is quite a lot of scope to change the settings of the car. You have a lot of options with how you put the car together, and it can result in quite a big difference in lap time. And apart from that, there is also a skill in the team to understand the driver and what the driver really needs as an individual, and to cater to that and to make the car suit them and to make them feel comfortable. Because there are a lot of examples of very good drivers who went to a team that they did not get on with or didn't suit. You see this in Formula One as well, and they really suffer on the results. I think usually the very best drivers are able to adapt and to change themselves to suit the car. And this is a skill that drivers are always trying to learn as well. But it's very difficult. So you usually need the help of the team to make the car suit you and to be comfortable with that.
I guess yeah, having experienced now HWA and a few years back ART, which is, I guess I would say with Brahma, like the two best teams out there. I guess it's you really see the difference in between them.
There are some differences and there are some things that are very similar. Formula 2 is a very difficult championship. You know, it's not so simple that the teams in top are having a better car than the teams at the bottom. Often, you know, it can be the case, but there are a lot of other things that determine the performance as well. The strategy of the team is very important. The way that they are executing strategy in the races and instructing the drivers. This is a skill that not a lot of teams have, or not. There are very few of them that are very good at it. Yeah, the cars do make a difference. But there's a lot of other moving parts that you need to be able to get right as well to have a good result in the race.
What do you think about when you drive as a driver? I guess, yeah, obviously you will be focused on your race on the track, but what goes through your mind?
I try to always go into a race with my mind as clear as possible, which means not having any questions when I go into the car. So questions about, did I make the right choice on the setup? Did I eat enough food at breakfast? Did I really train hard enough in the 3 weeks before this? Am I going to have a problem with this later in the race? These are all things that can be really distracting and are immediately putting you on the back foot. So I try to go to the race fully prepared. So when I sit in the car, I can just have a completely clear mind. And the only thing that I'm thinking about is the thing that is really right in front of me, doing every corner as well as I can and racing the other cars around me really in the moment and being really aware. So that's what I usually aim for. It's very difficult to achieve that because, especially I think when you become experienced, there are so many more things that you're aware about that need to be correct and that you want to maximize performance on, that to check every box before the race is very difficult.
How do you reflect on the whole Netflix Formula One approach, the whole dramatization from time to time? And yeah, how do you reflect on the whole Drive to Survive as a show, but also what it brings to Formula One? And
I think on the whole, it's pretty positive because the number of people that I've spoken to who were not interested in Formula One before Netflix started the series, versus and who are now interested in following it and watching the races is amazing. Like you said, they're definitely dramatizing some parts of it, but for the most part, they do a good job to just tell the story of the paddock. I would say like 70 or 80% of it is completely accurate. And the last 20 or 30%, maybe they just, turn up the drama a little bit. But that's not so bad, actually. And the way that they're doing it in the paddock is very clever. They are very transparent. You don't really know when they are filming and recording things so that they can get the honest reaction. And you have to be very careful what you say. So for sure, there are some guys who got caught out by that in the paddock because they have the microphone attached to a really long stick like a massive selfie stick almost, and they can just hover this over a crowd of people, and the microphone is above your head, but you have no idea because you're speaking to the person like this, and you would have to look up to see the microphone. So that's how they manage to get some of the conversations quite honest, I would say. But they do a good job, and in the end they're increasing the fan population, and especially in the younger generation, which is what Formula One needs. So I think it's a positive thing for sure. I will accept the little bit of drama that they put on some of the onboard cameras, and that's okay.
Is the Netflix team welcome in the paddock, or have there been some frictions and some conflicts because they want those insights, and it's like media, they will always scratch and push where it hurts.
Yeah. Generally, I didn't see any problems. I think people kind of accept that Netflix is going to make the documentary will not be 100% accurate all the time, because that's life. And as well, if you're having some friction with them, maybe it's not the best thing for your representation on the show. So generally, I think people are treating the crew pretty well.
So on a more sad or tragic note, I wanted to ask you about the risks you take as a driver. Obviously, you have experience what can happen in Formula 2 in Spa 2 years back. And even last year in Formula 1 with Grosjean also, that went quite the outcomes were positive. But how do you reflect on the risk, and how conscious are you of the risk when you begin, when you are 15 or 16? Because I guess you are not that mature, you are not that old, so I guess you see the thing differently than when you are 21, 22, 23. So
I think risk is less to do with age and more to do with experience, because I think from quite a young age I didn't really care about the risk, because as a young kid you don't think about it so much, and when you start to go into faster karts, or you go into cars and they get faster as well, the brain is very good at adapting to speed. So racing drivers are not afraid when they're driving, and if you were, then you would not be racing. It would be impossible to drive like that if you're scared. And you just get used to it. It's like when you drive on the road for the first time when you're 16 or 17 and you're learning to get your license. Of course, the first time it's in your head, it's all the things that can go wrong. What if there is a dog that runs from behind the car? What if this person doesn't see me and they come through the junction and we are having an accident? What if I'm pressing the wrong pedal, and instead of the brake I hit the clutch and I go straight to the back of a car? All of these things which you're thinking, and you know that the consequence is really big, so you're afraid. The consequence doesn't change when you're driving for 2 or 3 years, but you're not afraid anymore, because you know that the risk is very small, and you're quite well practiced in these things. You're quite skilled as a driver on the road, and it's just quite unlikely to happen to you. So you're not going to put the energy to worry about that, because if you drove every day to school and you're worrying that much, then it's a painful way to live, and it's the same with driving a car on a racetrack. The problems are coming with experience. Like I say, if when I speak to drivers from the older generation who had a lot more accidents, it was always when you see these things happening and it's close to you, then it really has a big impact, and it's harder to ignore the consequences, even if the risk is still the same. And I had a similar experience. You know, for many years, I didn't really worry about that side of it, partly because I know it's very unlikely, partly because the safety of the cars is really impressive now. And even if you're having a really bad accident at high speed, the strength of the car is amazing now, and the barriers and all of that technology. So you know that you're quite well protected. But when something happens, like what happened to Antoine and Spa, you know, this doesn't matter anymore. At the end of the day, you lost somebody, and somebody who was quite close. And the only thing that you can think about in that case is about the people around this guy, his family, his friends, all of the other people at the circuit who have to deal with that, and the fact that he didn't get to go on to live whatever life he was supposed to live. So that's really hard to shake. I think everybody in the paddock had the same experience or a very similar experience. But we didn't stop driving because it's, like I said, the risk is the same. Nothing changed there. It's very, very unlikely. I think I speak for a lot of drivers when I say we're very lucky to have found something that we're really passionate about and that we are quite good at. And for anybody to find something that you're good at and that you're really passionate about in life, you're a lucky guy or person, and you should keep doing it. And that's my view. It's never nice to be reminded of stuff like that, and you never forget stuff like that. But yeah, it would be a real shame to stop driving because you're thinking what if all the time.
Thank you very much. I won't emphasize too much on it because I guess it's, yeah, obviously it's not the most pleasant topic, and I guess you already were asked quite a bit about it, so I won't emphasize too much on it.
It's okay. It's good to talk about these things at the end. So,
but yeah, thank you very much for that. Another question which I had was, yeah, actually one question, but two approaches. The first thing is, how difficult was it for you to step back into to come back into a Formula 2 car? Because yeah, you had the experience, but after 4 or 5 months out, how difficult was it to get back into the car? Especially last week, it was Monaco, so I guess it's not the easiest track to get back to. And
no, yeah.
And the second thing is, how difficult.
Sorry, go on, yeah.
We often hear how difficult it is the step up from Formula 2 to Formula 1. But yeah, what makes it so challenging to get used to it, to get up to all the small details, and because we see now pilots like Mazepin or Schumacher, they are still getting used to Formula 1 cars. So how difficult is that step up?
Yeah, so I mean, for going back to the Formula 2 car, in some ways was quite easy because I did just 1 or 2 laps and already felt like everything was quite familiar. And even in the street circuit like Monaco, I was able to get into a good rhythm. But always to get back to the level where you're finding the last few temps is quite difficult, and to remember all of the tricks and all of that stuff. So that was taking a bit more time. And Monaco was definitely one of the hardest places I could have come back, because physically as well, Monaco is one of the hardest because you're always doing something. It's very bumpy. And I only drove a car with power steering since December last year. So it took a little bit of time to get used to everything again, for sure. But already by the end of the weekend in Monaco, I would say, back comfortable where I should have been. And then getting used to the Formula 1s. From Formula 2, the gap is quite big now in terms of the performance of the cars, because in the last 5 years, Formula 1 has become a lot quicker with extra downforce, wider tyres, and the development of the cars in general. whereas Formula 2 has stayed the same. So now the gap is something like 15 seconds per lap, which is huge. And as well as the just raw performance difference, it's a very different approach that you have to have in Formula 1, because instead of having 2 engineers and 2 mechanics working in your car in Formula 2, you now have, 10 times that working in Formula 1. And you have to be able to get the most out of all of these people and to use the information that they're giving you all the time, which is a lot. So the best guys in Formula 1, I think one of the real skills is to take all of that information and to really extract performance out of it, out of every single person in the team, and to get the car set just the way that you like. Because although you mentioned Mazepin and Schumacher, they're struggling a little bit maybe, and they had some spins and stuff like that. That's partly because I think the Haas is very difficult to drive at the moment. And that's normally the case. The cars that are further down the grid are more difficult and more unpredictable. The cars that are higher up the grid, I think you'll find that most drivers will be able to step into the car and to be at 95% quite easy. The car is very forgiving because there is performance in that as well. You know, if the driver is comfortable and confident, then they will get more out of it. But to get the last 5% takes a lot of skill, and it's where the best drivers really make the difference.
In your opinion, for Yuki, it's easier to get used to the AlphaTauri than for others to the Haas?
Yes, relatively. The car will be better because it's got more downforce. And when you're really at the back of the grid, you are just focused on getting as much downforce as possible, basically, from the car, as much performance as possible. And that sometimes will come at the cost of making the car more forgiving, because you just need, the gap is too big and you need to be able to extract the maximum out of the settings. Whereas when you're in a more forgiving position, if you're in the middle of the pack or towards the front, you can start to consider the other aspects of the car, like making it more drivable.
Okay. Do you really feel the difference in power and speed from the sheer performance of a Formula 1 in contrast with a Formula 2 car? Because
oh yeah, for sure. It's a big difference, because not only is the car faster with more power, more downforce, more braking capability, all of this stuff. Formula 1 cars are prototype cars, and they are built to a level of detail that you don't find anywhere else. Whereas a Formula 2 car is built to a budget, and it's built from a spec sheet. So every car is more or less the same. And what that means is when you're driving the Formula 2 car, it feels good. But when you compare it with a Formula 1 car, it's like comparing a mainstream car like a Ford Fiesta, for example, and comparing it to a custom Rolls Royce or something built just for the track day. It's a completely different feeling. And the Formula 1 car has a lot more capability, and it's much more refined in every way. So it's very rewarding to drive as well.
But yeah, I can understand that on your brake, you really feel the difference, and also from the downforce. But even just from the pure acceleration, do you is it different? Like only the speed?
Yes, you feel the difference in speed. I mean, you get used to the different speeds very quickly. But for sure, the hybrid engines, they have nearly 1,000 horsepower, so the kick is quite impressive. And Formula 2, I think, is just over 600. So it's still a lot, but you're talking about an extra 50% or 60% of power. So it's really a big difference.
Is it difficult to explain how difficult is your job to people, to not driver or normal people like us? For example, I can play tennis, so I know how difficult it can be to play tennis or soccer or other sports that we can practice, but we can't drive a Formula One car. So how difficult it is for drivers to explain their jobs?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's one of the problems with motorsport is that it is not very accessible. So you kind of you're just watching from outside. You like you say, you can't just go to a track and try a Formula One car like a tennis player can just play tennis. So it's a shame, but it's also why I think it's quite nice when we do days with sponsors as a team. We will take them to a track, and we'll take a. When I was working at Renault, for example, we would take the Renault sport cars, like the fast Clio and the Megane and stuff like this, and the race drivers can take the sponsor clients around the track. So you can get a little bit of a taste for it like that, and it's always a lot of fun because people are always scared. But yeah, this is the closest that you can get, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah, I won't keep you much longer, so you can rest as well. I just have two or three small last questions. First things first is, how cool is it to say that you're a professional driver? When someone asks you like, what's your job? And you can say, I'm a professional racing driver.
So usually, to be honest, if I meet somebody for the first time, I just say that I work in motorsport because it's more simple. And for me, it depends, of course, the situation. But if I just say that I'm working in motorsport, that is already interesting enough. And then we can have a conversation and depart. But when I'm telling people that I'm a racing driver, you can have the same conversation many times about how did you start? How did you do this? What are you doing now? So I prefer to just say that I work in motorsport because it's easier. But it is cool for sure. And my friends also try to use this sometimes. If we need to go into a club or something, they say, do you know who this guy is? But it doesn't work. So
what will you do in the next month if, because you don't continue Formula 2, as you said. And yeah, I guess you will continue to work with Williams at the factory. But
yeah. I have a few more GT races scheduled coming up, and I will continue to work with Williams at the factory, going to the simulator. Maybe I will go to another race, especially if I do the FP1 anytime soon. But that's going to be the main program for me now.
Okay. Yeah, I'll stop the recording right now. So many thanks to have given us some time.
Yeah, no worries. Sorry for being late again.
No, don't worry.
It was really an awesome opportunity, and I would like to thank you for your insights, which are quite priceless.
Yeah, no worries. Of course, I hope that everybody enjoys it. So.
Yeah.